This is a Clouds weather alert.
Meteorologist Casey Cloud breaking in with a very urgent weather situation right now. I've been watching storms through the day, some tornadoes, but they've been relatively on the weaker side. But now a turn for the worst in North Alabama. A very significant tornado appears to be in progress here, headed toward the Huntsville metro. Tornado emergency being issued by the office there about 5 minutes ago or so to parts of Limestone and Madison counties. Need to get into shelter immediately. A very significant hook echo here on this storm. We hope it breaks up, but we're continuing to track this area. They cleared a brief signature a moment ago, and the latest scan isn't quite as clear, which could be a good sign, but I know we have sometimes issues here because of the topography. I know with the radar, I don't want to take any chances here on this because it has a history of producing a confirmed significant tornado, and there's a tornado emergency in effect because this could be a potentially catastrophic tornado. That's what the Weather Service office in that area says. This could be deadly. We're talking about a radar confirmed tornado that could devastate parts of the Huntsville metro if it is still in progress here and as significant as the indications were earlier on. I know Madison and Huntsville momentarily, going to be impacted here as we're looking at things right into Ward, maybe town there. We're talking about the University of Alabama, Huntsville, and Redstone Arsenal around 6:35 local time there. Alabama A&M University around 6:45. So again, the office there in Huntsville calling this a potentially deadly tornado here as we're looking at things. I know some TV stations have their own radars in that area too, so there's a chance that they might be able to see stuff a little bit better to avoid prompted this tornado emergency, because I know there was definitely debris here, definitely significant concern, but it looked a little bit maybe on the lower side here to require a tornado emergency from this moment. There's a lot of other tools that can be used to issue a tornado emergency here by the office there in Huntsville or any other Weather Service office. I know some of the Weather Service offices today, they're having to issue warnings from afar, so that could, maybe change, if we get an emergency, maybe you think it's a little bit more precautionary. That's not the case here. This is issued out of the Huntsville office. I know they're doing some different things to improve offices there, like in Nashville and in Birmingham. But in Huntsville, they're issuing this emergency. They think this could be catastrophic for their area there. They need to get folks into shelter immediately. I'm going to see if we can switch to another mode on the Doppler here that might say it's a little clearer. It might probably be the north side of Huntsville based on some of the indications I'm seeing. I know we're using the Huntsville high top radar here as we're looking. I know it's interesting where the debris signature was and kind of correlation here with some of the different scans. So I'm loading another radar mode up. It's the same radar, but it'll be a different perspective on this here, as this could be a very serious situation here for Huntsville. There was a clear debris signature. It's just the idea, as we're continuing to track this here, there's been some kind of displacement with this in some regard. But let me go ahead and switch this on over here. I know this is a very big deal here for the Huntsville metro. As we're looking, I'm just, we got to take this as if this could be, catastrophic. Honestly, the radar presentation doesn't necessarily show that, but there's been issues over the years here. I believe it was a tornado, I want to say in 1989. It was really hard to get a handle on until it was already hitting there. I don't think it's an F5, don't get me wrong, but even an EF2, EF3 type of tornado could be very, very significant. And that was in November. This here is in, of course, the month of May. As we're looking at things, looking at that latest scan, I do see something in there. It's a little bit awkward the way it looks here on the scans as we're looking, which is good because, if it was something more obvious, it would be much more concerned. But they issued the highest level of tornado warning to the office in Huntsville, western Madison County, eastern Limestone County. A confirmed large and destructive tornado is located in the community of Madison, Alabama there. They're calling this a deadly tornado, life-threatening situation. Flying debris may be deadly to those caught without shelter, and mobile homes will be destroyed. Considerable damage to homes, businesses, vehicles likely, and complete destruction is possible. if this were to be as bad as a tornado emergency in Illinois, which I'm not saying it was, here over the last little bit, or is as we look ahead, but that was a high end EF4 there as we were looking there toward areas around Marion, give or take, and it literally, there's a 2-story home, and after it got done, the tornado came through there, literally there was just a slab left, so, if we had that in a highly populated area, this would be disastrous. This is also, ironically, and it's not going to be to that level, I can't imagine, but, it is the 12th anniversary of the last EF5 in the country, the Moore tornado, but I don't think it's to that level, but you don't need an EF5 or an EF4 even to need a tornado emergency. Only need like an EF2 plus heading toward a metro. That's the criteria for this, but they're calling this potentially catastrophic here. As we're looking at, it's, kind of not clear in some ways. It looks like there's rotation up here, but we were looking, there's more debris toward the southern flank of this here, and maybe more down in here, give or take. I have to back it up a little bit maybe, or go forward even to see some of that. Yeah, right in there, as we were looking, there was a debris signature, but that seems to have gone away. But until they drop this tornado emergency type of phrasing, we got to treat this as if this is, worst case scenario here. Not saying it is, but it could be. So, again, we really got to get folks into shelter here, in toward this area, as we're looking toward normal, that community there in the Huntsville metro. But there's been some displacement here with the angles. Everybody in this area, they're still saying catastrophic. So, and, the way that there have been issues with radars in this part of the country over the years, we got to be just taking this as worst case. Get to that basement now. If you don't have that, put that bicycle helmet on, football helmet on. If you're in a site-built structure, as you're getting that interior room. Now, if you are in this mobile home, really, if you have, any time at all, you need to get out of that and get to a safer structure. I mean, you can go into a ditch as a last resort, but that is not ideal. Obviously, cover your head and the like. But they're still calling it an emergency for a tornado plus 2-inch hail. As we're looking here at the latest from the Huntsville office, you see the box just updated on your screen here at 6:37 Central Time. Again, this is in the southeast, unlike some of the others we've been down with lately. This is really late in the spring months here to have a tornado emergency in the southeast. Generally, once you get through about the end of April, you're not going to have this kind of stuff. The rest of today had been kind of really, where we're getting weaker tropical-like tornadoes maybe developing, but they weren't enough for me to cut in. And then all of a sudden, we saw this strengthen, and we're getting ready in case they issue something, PDS even. They went straight from this base confirmed to tornado emergency, though. So we had to jump right in here to talk about this potential catastrophic scenario here in northern Alabama there for parts of Limestone and Madison counties. I know there's some traffic cameras. I was trying to effort some of those. I'm going to try to look at some of that information again. I was having trouble finding a whole bunch of them there from the Alabama Go traffic system there as I'm kind of looking, because you almost have to know the topography there a little bit better, quite honestly. I did try it because I couldn't find them. I hadn't really used that system before, but I couldn't really find a map. But we're just going to start pulling up cameras because there might be something in here. So let's go ahead and show you some of these from the Alabama Department of Transportation, because, there could be something here as we're looking. So we're going to do that here in just a second. If I can. Let me go ahead and see what we can come up with here. Okay, well, it's not going to let me do it. Okay, I guess their system has it where you can't do that for whatever reason. So, okay, so that's the storyline there, which is interesting. Normally, the state cameras, you can do that, but for whatever reason, I guess they don't want people to be able to use them here on air. But again, continuing to track this here as we're monitoring things in North Alabama. So again, we have a tornado emergency here. A tornado emergency in play for parts of that area. Observe potentially catastrophic tornado here. Hail to 2 inches as well. Make sure you are not, absolutely not though, parking under an overpass to just try to get out of the way of hail or a tornado. That's about the worst place you can be, because the winds could just accelerate through there. as we're looking at things. But tornado emergency for Huntsville area near Highway 72 and Jeff Road. At 6:34, confirmed large and destructive tornado located near Madison, moving east at 35 miles an hour. This is a tornado emergency for the Huntsville area near Highway 72 and Jeff Road. A particularly dangerous situation. Take cover now. This could be a deadly tornado. You're in a life-threatening situation. Flying debris may be deadly to those caught without shelter. Mobile homes will be destroyed. Considerable damage to homes, businesses, and vehicles likely, and complete destruction is possible. The tornado will be near Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, University of Alabama in Huntsville, and Alabama A&M University around 6:40 p.m. Central Time. I know our local area covering North Florida and South Georgia, we could have some strong and severe storms tomorrow. A lot lower chance than this. Maybe a quick spin-up tornado happens, but the chance is way lower than up here. This was an enhanced risk. That's a marginal 1 out of 5. This is a 3 out of 5 as we're looking at things. So let's check for debris again. Let's go through some of the different tilts on here. That may be something, there may be an angle blockage here. I tell you what, that may be, that's why I've been kind of trying to use caution. That may be the tornado right in there about to get over there, US 72 in toward that area. That may be as we go up higher and tilt here on the radar. It's on the top of Red Mountain, I believe, from, looking at storm coverage in that market over the years. So, just continuing to track the situation here very carefully. I'm going to see what else we're maybe finding here with different reports on social media and the like. Again, a tornado emergency here in North Alabama. A tornado emergency there. I know Reed Timmer, apparently, we can't say this to you on the air, but storm chaser meteorologist Reed Timmer apparently caught the tornado on camera a little while ago, and it was very fierce looking, so we can't take any chances here. We can't take any chances with this. I know that was in the area, maybe somewhere on Athens, Alabama, give or take, as we're looking at things there. That was a little bit earlier on. That's maybe why they got so concerned and had to, pull the trigger on the catastrophic tag. Yeah, there's some videos coming out on social media, pictures. So that's why, we don't want, folks to get caught off guard like some did in 1989. This is not as strong as that one. I'm confident in saying that, but it still could be very destructive here. That was an F5. Even an EF3 that could, be very crushing here for the northern parts of Huntsville here in toward North Alabama as we're checking things, as we're tracking things. So, I know, continuing to monitor this. I know I'm getting word about the AFF TV in Huntsville. They're intermittently losing power at points. Could be because of the tornado. I don't know where the studio is in precise, correlation. But tornado emergency for the Huntsville area near Highway 72 and Jeff Road. This is a particularly dangerous situation. Take cover now. So Highway 72, Jeff Road. We were, looking at the different roads in here. And this is 72 here, folks. As we're tracking this, as we're monitoring this. Again, very serious tornado emergency for the Huntsville area here. As we're continuing to monitor this scenario. Again, we need to get folks into a basement. You need to be underground here. That's what's preferable. I can't say it obviously in the air. I'm not authorized to, but Reed Timmer, meteorologist in the meteorology community, had a very fierce video of this tornado a little bit off toward the west here. And if we're extrapolating out, if we have anything like that in the North Metro, this could be, very serious stuff. We could be talking about winds, give or take, to around 150 miles an hour, and about the worst case scenario. I know that tornado in East Kentucky with even more fierce parameters back Friday night around the London community in Laurel County had winds to 170. It was an EF4 based on the survey update here this afternoon from the National Weather Service there in Jackson, Kentucky. So, again, we really just have to be on top of this. You know, we were on guard in case something took a turn. I thought maybe some PDS warnings. Really hadn't had that, and all of a sudden we go straight to the worst, highest level of tornado warning. The tornado emergency here reserved for just the extreme, and worst case potential scenario. So again, that's what we're dealing with right now. Tornado emergency there for parts of Huntsville, Limestone, and Madison's where the warning is. As we're dealing with this, I know. What's interesting, the box just went away here because the time of the warning, was set to go off there at 45 past the hour. They may be in shelter or something, depending on where the office is in there. So hopefully they'll be able to reissue here on this. The tornado emergencies for the Huntsville area near Highway 72 and Jeff Road, a particularly dangerous situation. Okay, they've just reissued, and they've done it here with the PDS warning, but not the catastrophic tag. So that means technically it's no longer an emergency, but this still is a very serious weather situation as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things there. That just came across that this is a confirmed large and extremely dangerous tornado, according to the Weather Service's data anyway, located over the University of Alabama in Huntsville or near Huntsville, moving east at 30 miles an hour. So PDS, still very significant being in the metro. The Huntsville office did issue it. I wasn't sure where their office was, in correlation to this, if they had taken shelter themselves. But, we just got to treat this is very serious, but no longer an emergency. But you got to stay on your tornado safe spots. The new warning goes until 7:30 Central Time there for portions of Jackson and Madison counties. We're going to stick with this as this goes to the metro because you can't take any chances in a situation like this. That is for sure. As we're continuing to watch this scenario there, North Alabama, a very serious scenario, and I appreciate everybody tuning in and trusting me here on this Tuesday night, this May 20th, 2025. I don't think it was like this, but this is, the 12th anniversary of the Moore tornado there, the last EF5 in the country, but whether, it's going to be an EF5, but it could have still been something like an EF2, EF3, or maybe, depending on damage, which is what we, get determination off of, could have still been like an EF4 or something in the, in a situation. I think the debris signature would have been a lot clearer if we said something like that, though, quite honestly. Even with the angles and the topography issues and things like that. But, that can still do major damage is my point. Even an EF1 or EF0 could really wreak havoc on a mobile home or a mobile home park, something like that. So there's your scale. That's going to be determined after the fact by a damage survey, but we try to give you an idea in real time for a perspective. But obviously, the 65 mile an hour tornado can be, life-changing in some cases if you're in like a vehicle, that causes an accident and or mobile home. Even, those winds could do some major damage to that. It's worse than that, I'm sure, based on the video at points, way worse than the minimum of 0, but I'm just kind of giving you guys perspective here. Again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest on exactly what's happening here. See that hook echo? This is, before we had storm relative velocity tool and before we had correlation coefficient, you would just look for the hook. And you have that hook echo here on this. You have that hook, that definitive hook, and that kind of gives you an idea of where the tornado could be. I mean, this looks like there's rotation right over Huntsville and I-565, but there's a lot of wind energy around the normal community there, around US 231, and there's even some rotation on the back side of this. I mean, it's possible, not saying this is likely, but it's at least possible there could be multiple areas of tornadic activity in here. As we're looking right there, looks like maybe near Rideout Road, apparently. There could be another little spin there on the bottom of this, trying to get going. So it's not just confined to one area. That looks like some really strong wind over the normal community. Let's keep looking at this here. Keep tracking this here. I mean, there's that hook, so that in theory, it's possible there could be more than one tornado there, and then we could have some type of rotation on the back side, the bottom side of this here, as we're watching this move east at 30 miles an hour. Again, not an emergency anymore, but still, you got to stay in that safe spot. You got to stay in that shelter, that of course, basement, underground basement, something like that. As we go ahead and look at things here, just so important, you know. We saw the loss of life in that low India 4 there in toward East Kentucky back late Friday night. At least this is happening when most folks are awake. But we just got to be really mindful of this here. Got to be really, really cautious of what's going on. You know, as we're looking at this, I want to see the wind on another mode. It does a little bit better job here. We'll go to the radar scope source. Sometimes it does. I mean, it depends on the situation, but the way the color pixels are, you're seeing winds 75, miles an hour. So as we're looking, you see areas there like Ryland and Maysville, maybe going kind of in between, the centers of those and the center of Meridianville and Moore's Mills. So again, continuing to track all this here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit. I'm going to check some other information. It's the only confirmed tornadic scenario in the country right now. Again, we're tracking things. Our other source, let me pull it in. I know we are getting multiple reports here of hail. Quarter size, along those lines. Some limbs broken there. As we're tracking the situation, of course, we're always going to be on, for our local area when we have concern if we get any, spin up weak tornadoes to develop tomorrow, tornado warnings in play. We'll be on the air on all the different platforms to give you the latest. Of course, we have national concerns like a tornado emergency, something really escalated. We're on as well on all the different platforms. As we go ahead and continue to look at things, I want to kind of give you an overview of the situation because it has been an active day of warnings, but not an escalation like this until just all of a sudden really started seeing things take that turn there in North Alabama. As you see, there's an enhanced risk, there's tornado watch in play in multiple spots. There's how many? 6 tornado watches. I'll take that off for a moment so you can see the enhanced risk here to 3 out of 5. We're just going to discuss them as, kind of give us an idea of a new watch that was coming a little bit earlier on. You see that pink, purple box there, that's to confirm, PDS tornado warning. Had the different, border, and we had the emergency. We have some disruptive severe thunderstorm warnings ongoing up there in North Alabama. And that is for, let's see here. So let me click on that. Jackson, Limestone, and Madison. Now it's not considered destructive in that regard anymore, but golf ball size hail. We're also looking there toward Mississippi, there's a destructive severe thunderstorm warning. Yazoo City was the case. That's been downgraded as well from 80 winds to 70 winds, but there's still weak rotation. Could have some quarter size hail with that. So continuing to track all that's here. You see the orange, that's an enhanced risk here at 3 out of 5. Is a threat. We had been seeing 4 out of 5 recently, but 3 out of 5 still can, and this did carry a big hatched area for the risk of some strong tornadoes. We had some tornadic activity earlier on, maybe not, the overwhelming stronger kind, and then till all of a sudden we had some type of strong tornado in North Alabama based on that video. But it's going to be determined based on damage, of course, but based on the video that I saw behind the scenes, it definitely looked intense. As we go ahead and track this here, let me go ahead and see what we have. You see a tornado watch lingering in parts of Illinois and Indiana. Then we have multiple tornado watches in these yellow areas here that are shaded underneath with the other outlines. Of course, the yellow with the black outline, those are severe thunderstorm warning boxes. The red box is radar indicated tornado warnings. The purple is the confirmed tornado warning scenario, flash flood warnings in the dark green, and then you have reports and lightning on here as well. So again, continuing to track this situation. Let's pull up the STP, the tornado parameter. STP, significant tornado parameter. I mean, this is something that could still have been problematic here. I don't know, but this is not overwhelming. You see how we had the emergency though? But the overall FCP is about a 1 to a 1.5. That, to me, that doesn't really seem. I know we can have different interactions. Sometimes when you get closer to the northeast Alabama too, we can have this kind of accelerate and strengthen. So you gotta be really careful because you have Red Mountain and the like, and sometimes things can do weird stuff in that area there that maybe the parameters wouldn't fit what actually ends up coming down to the surface here. So we gotta be careful of that. These aren't necessarily the parameters you'd expect to a tornado emergency to have been required in. But it doesn't mean it couldn't happen. Instability, zero. But this looks more like, these numbers look to me, and what has been going on all day, more of a type of threat that we'd have around here earlier in the spring in North Florida and South Georgia. Big day for us, but not, a historic day. That's what it looks like to me. But, up there with the Red Mountain area there, that it could be a different type of scenario. So, again, just continuing to track this here. Continuing to look at things there in that area. In fact, I think let me double check that. I might be misidentifying that. Red Mountain, I think, is actually, because we have an area here of terrain in northeast Alabama. Let me clarify that real quick. I want to make sure I get that right. Okay, there's just terrain. I mean, Red Mountain's more toward Birmingham. Sand Mountain, I guess, would be the better characterization there. The high top radar site kind of gives that wording off. So I guess you'd call that Sand Mountain area, not Red Mountain. That's more toward Birmingham. But again, so as we're looking here toward the area with the mountain and terrain impacts here, again, continuing to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. Trying to keep you guys safe and informed here. Let's go to rotation tracker. You can see some of these areas of spin over the last little bit. There's now indications of 2-inch tail right there on the southwest side of the Huntsville metro area. It's very significant. It could be right over town, though, quite honestly, looking on another source. Again, continuing to track this here. That can definitely do some damage, be damaging there. As you see that black there, this radar is actually indicating, no, it's not in the right spot, but it's actually indicating over 3-inch hail. The warning's for 2-inch hail, though, as we're looking, and that would make the most sense, around 2-inch hail. Could just be a lot of it, and you would think it would sell more in correlation coefficients. So again, continuing to track that here, continuing to monitor the scenario here, as we're looking in North Alabama. Just trying to keep you guys informed. We'll check some of the power outages here in that area. And again, thanks so much for everybody tuning in and trusting me here on this Tuesday night, this May 20th, 2025. Okay, so far in Alabama, according to PowerData.us, we have 11,710 customers in the dark, but this is very early on in the situation as we get more information in. So further west in North Alabama, we have Lauderdale County, 1,847 customers in the dark. Lawrence County, 1,293. Madison County, 5,163 customers in the dark there. So some fierce weather. That could be more than that at this point, though, as we're continuing to watch things here with this situation. I mean, it looks like a little bit more wind energy in here. Even if it doesn't look like a lot, we just can't take any chances with this. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here with this scenario. Again, I'm just trying to give you guys the very latest on exactly what is happening there. Again, make sure you're in shelter. Again, we're still with you here at 6:59 Central Time, 7:59 Eastern on this Tuesday night. Trying just to get all the latest information on in here. Effort and all the details. Just trying to see what's going on up there. Trying to be with you here. I know, very large hail in there, whether it is a tornado or not. Again, very serious stuff. Almost like a nasty hail core. I mean, then, I want to look at that to make sure there's not some type of tricky debris signature. I know there's other radars people use in this area. Television stations and, other media groups have access to there. So I have a feeling it was more definitive on that than what it was on this. And with the video involved, that's what really, I think, worried them enough to see the catastrophic tag there in the Huntsville office. Generally when you see that black of a spot, you'd see a hail signature and correlation coefficient. But we're looking there around just north of US 431 with that, it would appear. But there could be a little bit of displacement going on. There's a new tornado warning now to ward areas further south, though, around the Priceville community in Morgan County. This is radar indicated, talking about Madison, Limestone, and Morgan until 7:30 Central Time. At 7:01 there. Yes, if it thunders, I'm capable of producing a tornado is located over Priceville, 7 miles east of Decatur. Moving east at 45 miles an hour, a tornado and quarter-size hail. And that could impact the Huntsville Airport there, Redstone Arsenal, and some of those areas, there on the south side of Huntsville. This one up here, we got an update. It's a confirmed base tornado warning now. Am I right? Or let's see here. I need to zoom out. I think we just got an update for Jackson and Madison. So it was radar about 10 minutes ago. I think they just confirmed a tornado near Moore's Mill. Yeah, they sure did. A tornado near Moore's Mill. Okay, up here's Moore's Mill. Maybe a little bit further down here with this. I mean, because we have all this wind enhancement. Wind's going away from the high top radar. Wind's going toward the high top radar. I know this is moving east at 30 miles an hour. And as we go on, it looks like right now, though, a little bit of northerly component. So as of now, it's not a guarantee. But, Scottsboro, that's where, of course, folks have gone, including myself, years ago, to the unclaimed luggage store there that, that prompts so much interest across the country. They say go a little north of that. But this one here may not. That's really strengthening there on that southern flank. It may be kind of, let's take a look at maybe kind of taking the energy away from the rotational aspect in the northern one, and that southern one could become more dominant here. I know there's an airport weather warning that's been issued now as we're looking at things for the Huntsville International Airport until 8:30 Central Time. Very gusty winds, and a cloud to ground lightning within 5 nautical miles of the airport. So got to be mindful of that here. I know, even though the northern one has a confirmed tag again on it, This southern one has a look to it that is concerning. Honestly, that may be debris. I know there's inflow in here. Let's see here. Could just be inflow. I'm going to look at some other sources. So I can kind of isolate this on the high top operator on our other source here. Bear with me, I'm just kind of doing it right now. I think that's just inflow, but it doesn't mean we couldn't start to see a debris signature. Now today's storms until we started seeing things that are west of Huntsville take off. We hadn't seen many real clear debris signatures today, and we've had confirmed tornadoes, whether spotted on cameras, weaker ones, until we had that escalation. But this is just southeast of Decatur, Alabama. The Triana community, Priceville is kind of in between those two spots here. It's kind of headed up toward Triana there, it would look like, as we're continuing to monitor the situation. So again, I've been, because this is kind of mostly, at least, in clear air when I go to correlation coefficient. If that was, in a spot on the storm a little bit more, you think more likely a tornado. Doesn't mean there's not one there, but it would seem a little less likely, but I think it's possible. I think it's definitely possible that it could be one there, and you got to treat it as such here as we're looking at the situation. I know we're just continuing to look at things. I know that last scan, really kind of shrunk that little gap in there, so you got to wonder if it's trying to spin up a little bit, get something down toward the surface there. If you get the rotation in the storm there and it to be together there, then that could drop down toward the ground and produce a tornado around the Triana community. Again, continuing to track this here. North Alabama, we did no longer have a tornado emergency. As we were looking at things there, let's see, Jackson and Madison counties confirmed tornado warning still continues. We have a radar indicated tornado warning there just south, east of Decatur, Roy. With that, it's for parts of Madison, Limestone, and Morgan counties. We also have tornado warnings here in areas further north of Chattanooga. Another one just popped up for radar indications. You're watching some of that south of McMinnville a little bit. Portions of Coffee and Cannon counties there, as well as Van Buren, Warren, Coffee, Grundy, and Cannon. And then we have another one here for portions of Cumberland, Van Buren, and White counties. And you see flash flooding around Nashville with some warnings in play. So a thunderstorm warning east of Nashville there. Have some warnings up in Kentucky. Gonna have to watch that area in London. They got hit hard the other day in just a catastrophic way. Had some more rain come across today, and we could have even more later on. Tornado watch remains in a play even for that area as we're looking ahead to 2 a.m. Hopefully it'll clear out before then. It should, but still, got to be mindful of that. North Georgia, eastern Kentucky, far southwest North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, and far southwest Virginia. We have a tornado watch in play until 2 a.m. Eastern. We have just multiple watches going through the Birmingham area there. That goes until, let's see here, they just did that one recently to 1 a.m. Central. Another one instituted recently goes until midnight Central, including the Jackson, Mississippi area. And we've had some tornado warnings in the Arklamas today. They've been following those. So the thunderstorm watch further west, but tornado watch further east here with the overall setup. And I know because we don't generally get stuff this far south and east, to have a tornado emergency this late in the springtime period. I do want to look at the modeling for our area. I mean, I would do that anyway, whether we had that or not, in these cases. But let's go to the 18Z so we can kind of go out as far as we can here. So it's going to be like 10 o'clock Eastern time tonight because we got to keep our local area informed. Of course, we'll have our, assuming we're not, having to stick with this, way much longer here. We'll have our formal update here later on tonight as we're looking at things. But you're going to be busy tomorrow, possibly. Maybe it's just cutting in a little bit, though. Or maybe we get lucky and don't get any warnings. You never know. But as we'll look at this, I want to look at the latest. I haven't had a chance to look at this since we've been on the last little bit, some of the latest data, but some of it I have. So let's go ahead and kind of So look, I've been just monitoring these storms, in progress, but it's always good to look at the long run of this. As we were looking here, this goes, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. It kind of is, not moving really fast, but it starts to get toward Quitman County around 5 a.m. here. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in the scenario. So 6 a.m. I know the models have really struggled lately, so we got to be on guard here. You just never know what can happen. I know we're on St. Louis, some stuff developed out ahead of the main line, which was surprising there, and was producing some debris signatures last night. Not saying that'll happen this time. This looks like a rotating storm with the decaying line, so we'll have to watch that. That could be, tornado warning at 7 a.m. there in that vicinity, but the models have struggled with this pattern. It's a tough one to figure out, the meteorology of it. As we're looking there, this is 8 a.m. tomorrow, 9 a.m., see a bunch of decay, 9, 10 a.m. always nothing, but then if we get some big time heating in here, we could get resurgence with this a little bit, and you'll have to see. This gets to about 3 in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11. So not overwhelming, doesn't look like, but still could be an issue. Okay, we're getting word of a debris signature now near the Gurley community there in North Alabama. So let's go ahead and jump back up in that direction. They just sent this out at 7:09 Central Time. A confirmed tornado is located near New Marker, 7 miles east of Moore's Mill, moving generally east at 30 miles an hour with a debris signature seen near the Gurley community, if I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, I apologize. But we'll go ahead and, ooh, that looks really tight there. This looks like it's really strengthening, as we talked about. Sometimes with the mountain type, accent and or the terrain up there, things can get kind of iffy. So that looks like something pretty tight there now. Is there population? Ooh, I think it's hitting some homes. Looks pretty wooded, but there's some homes in there. Oh my goodness, that's really getting nasty looking there. I mean, that's clearer and it's closer to the radar, so it doesn't mean it's as intense now as what we were seeing earlier on, but we are seeing a clearer, maybe clearer debris signature even than what we've seen at points back earlier on. So on this radar. Now keep in mind there are other radars that TV stations have. There's quite a few different tools that they have up there in that part of the country that, maybe you don't have around here in North Florida, South Florida. There's radars, cameras, just all sorts of stuff, all sorts of resources there after what happened in 1989. So again, it was a terrible F5 tornado that went through there without, a lot of people knowing about it ahead of time. So many fatalities from that. But again, as we look here at this on the Weather Service radar off the high top, there is a confirmed tornado on the ground there going from Madison into Jackson County there. This looks like it has winds estimating now with terrain. It's probably not going to be as good of an estimate as you would see in other spots, with radar at this distance, only 1,000 feet up per se. We're talking about 60 one way though, and maybe 60 the other way, give or take, which could get us to winds of 120, like an EF2 tornado. That sounds about right, but you just never know. Not seeing it really high up on that, but it could still be in here as I scrub between. I'm going some of the lower layers here. We'll go to this one, 1.5 degrees. Not yet. I think it might be on that one though. It's not that high up yet, but okay, so again, we need folks in shelter in that area there as I'm trying to run my other source here. This is east of Maysville, headed toward the Skyline community, it looks like. Ooh, that looks even worse on my other debris scanner now. The angles can play tricks on us, but that looks like a pretty nasty one. They may go particularly dangerous situation on this as it heads up toward the Skyline community as we're tracking this here. Okay, there's also some other communities in between here, so let me go ahead and look at some of my information. Very unincorporated communities kind of in between there. as we're looking at this, as we're tracking this. But need to be in shelter, obviously. As we continue to look, that looks worse and worse there, and I want to angle this over. It may not hold together all the way, but give you a general idea of that track there. And I kind of try my best drawing that line, but in general it's headed toward the skyline area there, give or take. So that's kind of giving you the idea here that in skyline you need to be in shelter immediately there. I think there's an unincorporated community there in between called Holly Tree. But, you know, Skyline has the higher population, it would seem. But everybody involved, I mean, in theory, it'd be more likely the towns before Skyline, you know, could get hit there because it could always fade away. But Skyline has a population of 851 folks there. As we're looking at this, as we're tracking this here off the high top radar. There's some pretty fierce looking winds there. As we're down with this, again, you'd not maybe expect this in later May, you'd expect this in later April. You wouldn't expect this as you're coming up on Memorial Day weekend here soon, but that's 77 mile an hour winds, 26 the other way. There, I know, 100 mile an hour winds, give or take, but my point being is you would expect this, you know, where it had been, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, to some degree, and it starts to become a little less likely there even this time of year. But, you know, those areas that makes more sense. But once you start getting further east and south, this is an atypical setup here for May 20th. I mean, you know, in history, 12 years ago, last EF5, there on record was in Moore, Oklahoma area. So we've had a lot of EF4s, don't get me wrong, including that one in toward eastern Kentucky the other day. Back on Friday, we were watching that, you know, devastating tornado hit. And tragically, you know, so many folks lost their life around that area there in Laurel, you know, Laurel County there, the London community. And we also had that EF4 where, as of now, last check anyway, nobody lost their life, though, in southern Illinois. With that tornado emergency that was in play, there was a 190 mile an hour tornado, 170 based on the surveys so far in East Kentucky. We also had some stuff in Kansas that was so fierce. It could have been, you know, really high with the winds, but if it, depending on what it hits, that's how it has to be rated here. And, you know, it may have not hit as much. Still some structures taking it, you know, with devastation, but it could have had more population than it did. As we continue to look, it really changed there on that latest scan more than what you would expect. But again, I think the terrain's playing a role. It may be kind of blocking even the debris slash rotation signature at times. I mean, there's the debris still. Let's go higher up on the tilt. Yeah, it's starting to really. Yeah, now you can see it on all of them because that really took that escalation there. So how high is this? It's still only a couple thousand feet up, but let's see if there's any of the other radars are showing this here. As I'm doing that, I'm going to put tornado safety tips up just really quickly for everybody at home. You know, what you need to do in a tornado watch, tornado warning, things along those lines. But I'm going to check some other radars here. We'll check the Columbus Air Force Base radar in Mississippi. I don't think the debris would be that high to see it on there. I'll go on tilt 1. That's just too far away, quite honestly. There is kind of a radar hole there from the Weather Service radar anyway, and, you know, the Tennessee Valley region, but Nashville's radar is really showing a spin. Oh, I think it's showing the debris on the Nashville radar. It's not maybe 100%, but I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're looking off the Nashville radar, and it seems like something around the Pleasant Groves area. Now, there could be a little bit of displacement, so maybe a little bit further, maybe north than this, but with all that terrain involved. But if you look, It sure seems like something there overlapping. Doesn't mean it is. It could just be the angle. But let's check the Peachtree City area radar. Atlanta Door area radar. Now that there. The timing looks less 15. Okay, I don't think that was. It must have been the hail signature. That's why it got higher up into the clouds there. We're going to get back to the radar there, the closer view. That storm looks pretty nasty in that area in southern Tennessee. Real quick, let's go to the Nashville because that looks like Morrison area. And then you see this storm here rotation as we get further east of Murfreesboro. Have to watch in the Knoxville area later on, maybe, give or take. That's what needs to be monitored there. Let's check their radar real quick. Because, you know, we don't want a situation like Cookville repeating for like Knoxville or something. Doesn't look near as tight on that. But do a tornado warning in play there as we're looking. See all these little white circles? Those are hail reports as we're tracking things here. As we're monitoring things in toward the weather center. And the debris still apparent there. Skyline community. As we look on the high top radar, you need to be in shelter. Make sure you're there. That's for sure. Zooming back out, and there's tornado watches where folks need to remain alert for rapidly changing weather conditions in the yellow shaded areas that are underneath there. Those remain in effect. Some not for much longer, some for a while. So as you go on to sleep tonight, if you're still under one of those, or could be under one further a little southeast, but you have multiple ways to receive alerts. Even in our southwest Georgia counties, I mean, I don't think the chance is zero here of something early before you get up in, like, you know, Quitman County or even Dougherty County, Albany area. That area is where I would make sure I have my ways to get alerts. You know, if you're not getting up too early tomorrow morning, you know, if you're sleeping into like 8 o'clock or something, I mean, you need to make sure you have a way to be waking up in case you do get a rogue area spin or even a specific thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag or something. As we just got a continuation of a radar indicated warning and a new confirmed tornado warning in that purple box in the Chattanooga area. This may go south of you guys, but you see how that rotates, and that's about as tight as it's looked on this radar anyway, but different angles, different spots can give different illusions here. But Jackson County, Northeast Alabama, Northeastern DeKalb County there, or DeKalb. I know sometimes it's a little bit tricky on these pronunciations. As we're tracking southeastern Franklin County, no tornado emergency no longer in effect, but still a tornado-producing storm located near Skyline or 10 miles northwest of Scottsboro, moving northeast at 40 miles an hour. So we're going to call it DeKalb County here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, as we're giving you the updates. I mean, Scottsboro is under the warning. I guess we just have enough of this here. You know, so that probably does include the unclaimed luggage store that so many people flock to from across the southeast in the country. I mean, at least be right on the edge of that. So just be in shelter. But as we go ahead and look at things here, as we continue to track here, continue to give you guys the very latest. You see that? That looks like the debris there around the Skyline community. Not calling it, you know, a large and extremely dangerous tornado, but any tornado that could be headed to where you're at, or somebody that you know is at, or even just anything that, you know, has people with it is dangerous, extremely dangerous. So, Skyline there, you have the Stevenson area. You have some of these other areas. I believe we've had bad tornadoes up in some of these areas, like maybe Hollywood, Alabama. I want to say going back last few years, just over Jackson County, you see Hollywood, Fackler, Stevenson. I'll need to be in shelter for sure up that way because this has, the history of producing a tornado. And still may be very well producing a tornado at this point in time. With this other tornado warning around, including areas of West and New Hope, but also right now it's around State Road 36. We're also looking at US 231. Portions of Madison and Morgan counties. Possible tornado over Redstone Arsenal. You see Owens Crossroads, New Hope. We're watching that area very carefully, obviously. I see they are expiring a tornado warning for Jackson and Madison, but let me see if that's just one that they had further back here on us. Yeah, I think that's the one further north. So they're just, the new box is taking over. So it's this area here is taking over for the area that was in play, that was covering areas for the west as well. I know there's a bit thunderstorm warning for Huntsville area. I know some of these areas may be trying to clean up from what could have happened, up here. So I don't want to have this bad weather coming in. That looked tighter down here. Let me look at that. Yeah, that looks like that's tightening up there. That's probably near some homes and or businesses. That may even be a tornado in progress, guys. Over a neighborhood there, right around State Road 36, US 231. I know we've had some other tornadoes in the country today that weren't as strong, that were confirmed, but those were not really showing, clear signatures. That I know it's kind of in the air. I kind of wonder if that's like a low precipitation type of tornado producing storm. Could this be the angle on the radar from the mountainous area too, kind of making it harder to see, because that sure looks like something down there headed toward the Owens Crossroads area. So need to be in shelter in Owens Crossroads there in North Alabama. Again, the reason we jumped in here, this is an interest day. We don't always have to break in for those on the national level, but we had to turn for the worst there with a tornado emergency issued in the Huntsville area with a catastrophic tag earlier on. So obviously that prompted us to come on because it became a really, really big national story for that moment. And we're staying on a little longer because some of these do have a history of producing tornadoes here, fairly quickly, at least based on these radar indications. Granted, it may be a little bit, a slower process, but with the terrain, it may be making it look weird, or the terrain could be impacting these here to cause them to spin up a little bit quicker. Now, that doesn't look as impressive on that color table, but we're going up toward Owens Crossroads here. That's just north of New Hope. As we're tracking things here, as we're monitoring the situation. This is south of Triana, but around Triana, you're still needing to be in shelter. You're under tornado warning. Well, you know what? Be careful for these storms further back, but it looks like that latest scan kind of, the velocity must be running. Yeah, that velocity is running a few minutes behind now, lagging behind. As we have a report of some 3-inch limbs broken in Triana. $half size hail, pea-size hail in the region further up here around Redstone Arsenal, dime-sized hail. These are reports actually from, Spotters Public and the like. Half-inch hail, inch-sized hail, dime-sized. You get some reports, 3-inch limbs broken. These are just kind of like, people just to put this in, in terms of like the category, it could be obviously more complex than that, but these different indicators of some wind damage, so it could be tornado damage. We're not sure yet. That'll take, surveyors from the Weather Service in Huntsville to kind of figure that out as we're tracking this. Okay, how many tornado warnings do we have in the country right now? I'm trying to kind of get my bearings. We have Madison and Morgan. Then Alabama, we also have the observed tornado for parts of areas there like Franklin and Jackson counties there. And we'll call it DeKalb. We also have in Tennessee there, Coffee, Cannon, Grundy, Van Buren, and Warren. Cumberland, Van Buren, and White counties there. Radar indicated for that area as well. Let's go ahead and broaden the view again. Okay, this is a tornado warning now in Mississippi, including Yazoo City. Radar indicated Yazoo, Sequina, Humphreys, and Sharkey counties there. So, Rolling Fork got hit so hard a few years ago. Hate seeing them anywhere near anything a few years ago when they got hit so hard. I think that was 2 years ago, I want to say. We're looking at things, tracking things here in the Weather Center. You see Yazoo City. We have this rotation. It's sometimes a little bit harder on the radar, but you see some rotation around the Cary community, moving toward Holly Bluff there, and maybe Yazoo City. And they got hit, I want to say, in 2008 by a significant tornado over that way. So those were all earlier in the year, though. Earlier in that spring severe weather season, which were kind of, accident in this part of the country for tornadoes anyway. Maybe not derechos or wind events, but tornado threat normally is not this strong, significant this late in the month of May in Alabama and the like. As we continue to look at this, okay, I know there's a new tornado warning now for portions of Jackson, Madison, Marshall, and Morgan counties. At 7:30 Central Time, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Morgan City, Alabama, or near Redstone Arsenal, moving east at about 30 miles an hour. Oh, ew. It doesn't look good. No, that's what we were kind of looking at. I know that one scan was kind of, I think it's, our radar's kind of playing tricks on us here too, I think, because the angle was kind of like making it look worse for a second before it does more analysis. But you know what? Let's make sure that's not, goodness, I don't know. That looks suspicious. Again, that's what we were looking at. Our radar's, it's tricky with all this terrain involved. It kind of causes an illusion here, but need to be in that tornado safe spot around Owens Crossroads there in northeast Alabama. This could be a dangerous situation. Because almost on that one radar, it almost looks like a debris ball. You know what? I think that is a debris ball, guys. As I'm looking at that, let me check all the stamps. 7:30, 7:29, 7:30. I don't know. It's weird looking. Let me look at this here a little bit better. These are not, as clear as you would like to see in some ways, but in some ways you don't want them so clear because that means it's so bad. That the timing's off by a minute, which kind of tricks us. It almost looks like it wants to be a debris ball there, but then that's 1 minute behind this, so that would make it probably just the inflow then. But it may be about to spin something up if there's not something there. There's certainly a lot of inflow in there, if nothing else. As we're looking at this there, Owens Crossroads, Paint Rock, Woodville there in northeast Alabama. The tornado warning. I see a storm that doesn't look good up toward Chattanooga north of there. Got some rotation south of Dunlap, but I know it's not to the extent of it, but there's just certain areas in the country, as you look out west, that you're hardly able to see anything on radar sometimes because of the terrain. I mean, those aren't areas you have the tornado risk as much in, but I know. I want to say Arizona comes to mind between that and the radar coverage. So. Yeah, that looks kind of nasty. There's a new tornado warning there for portions of Ray and Bledsoe counties there. This is south of Lake Tansy here. Moving toward the Rockwood community, maybe in that vicinity. Kingston's pretty populated. As we're looking there in East Tennessee. As we're continuing to track all this. Trying to give you guys the very latest here. Let me go ahead and zoom back out. Let's go back to these storms in Alabama. You know, and sometimes I have a little more confidence in just wrapping it up and saying a national threat wasn't as big of a deal. But these radar angles are playing tricks with us, and it's also getting, you know, towards sunset, which is going to make it harder for spotters. We'll see power flashes possibly if it's hitting, you know, areas with a lot of, you know, electrical equipment and the like. But my point is, these areas here with the terrain, it's harder to know how bad these tornadoes are because it's not as clear cut. Perimeters, you know, aren't overwhelming, but we had the emergency earlier on issued, you know, and there was seemingly a significant tornado on the ground based on some spotter video. And that's been visible on social media and the like. So I don't, you know, want to wrap it up quite yet because we could kind of get put in a spot here where all of a sudden we get like a tornado emergency after one or two more radar scans because something spins up and then it's clear it's doing something really bad. But it's a tough spot here. Owens Crossroads area though needs to be in shelter, whether, you know, it's an emergency or just a base warning. Which right now this is a radar indicated warning, so a base warning there for that area. As we get further up, continuing to look here, I know where sometimes it's clicking on some of the different information further over, but it's observed here. Looks like something up in there still. We're watching around the Skyline community. See how it's tighter further back, but there could still be something in there. As we continue to look, I know Chattanooga TV Mark will be watching all this here as we're looking ahead in the order timeline. But I know areas like Rome and Cartersville and Cumming, Georgia, Dahlonega, they're under a tornado watch. So, you know, that'll be a storyline that they'll be following in the Atlanta TV market as well. Folks, meteorologists in that market like Brad Nitz and David Shanley that have been doing this, you know, here in the meteorology business a long time. They'll be on top of that, you know, assuming that they're in today and tonight with the latest updates here on this Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Brad Nitz, of course, worked in this market, the Jacksonville market, a couple times over the years there as we're looking at things. You know, he was here in the late 90s at WTOV and in the early 2000s, give or take, at WJXT. I believe he's based on a promo I saw years ago, an Orange Park High School grad, and FSU grad as well. He was down in Central Florida during the historic 1998 tornado outbreak as they were, you know, going through that there, working that at West 2 down there, I believe it was. So many people lost their life around Kissimmee and the like. This is a tragic situation there in 1998. But as we go ahead and continue to track things here, continue to give you guys the very latest of what's going on as we're giving you guys the up-to-date details. You see Owens Crossroads there. You see, you know, that area we're watching very carefully. And let me zoom out, see, move it back because my screen sometimes I have it. It's a little bit more zoomed in on here than what you guys see. But around here and around here, we're watching these spins. They don't look, you know, generally tight enough for me to stick with it like I am doing. But I just don't, you know, I want to, you know, right at sunset sometimes things can escalate and I want to stick with it a little bit longer. I hate to take a chance and then all of a sudden we have like a terrible tornado dropping out. I know. I mean, I know how it is with the terrain around, you know, where all this, you know, areas there come together. We can see multiple states. I mean, Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee. The same trip I took to Scottsboro years ago, about 17 years ago, the unclaimed luggage store there also top, you know, of some higher elevation, seeing multiple states there. And I know how the terrain is, so the radar coverage may be kind of harder to achieve down toward the surface with the wind velocities. So Again, in Chattanooga, something, could catch us off guard here if we're not careful. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it that long. But I at least want to keep it going a little bit longer here, just to be on the safe side. We could just switch the radar stream too. I was trying to kind of, with the emergency tagging like that, and with the way the risk is, I was kind of trying to maybe avoid keeping the emergency one going without talking because I didn't want to scare folks. But we may do that, or we may just talk through this a little longer and try to wrap it up if things look a little better and always break back in. But it still takes, depending on exactly what you're looking at, I would say like 2 to 5 minutes, give or take, to get on the air. Maybe only one if we're really on top, if something you can just tell it's time to hit the button to go on. But it takes, 2 to 5 minutes sometimes to get on here. And, a lot can happen in 2 to 5 minutes in meteorology. So that's why I like to stick with these once we start going, sometimes even a little bit longer here, just in case, as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. So, honestly, right now, and I know there's some displacement with this, some of the worst looks like, the rotation would go south of Chattanooga, you would think, but I don't want to say that with certainty because the way the box is, if you kind of draw that out, it could include Chattanooga there in parts of southern Tennessee. So, just have to be very mindful of that. Here we currently have, 6 tornado warnings in the country, 3 in Tennessee, 2 in Alabama, and 1 in Mississippi. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. What prompted us to come on a little over an hour ago was the potential for a catastrophic tornado moving toward Huntsville. I don't know if that happened. There, but, you just always got to stay on guard in these type of situations here. You just have to kind of stay on guard in these type of situations because I know there was some damage. And it's just a matter of, staying alert for the rapidly changing conditions because there was definitely a very significant potential there in toward the metro. Well, the service doesn't see those, emergencies very often, that's for sure. I know, granted, in hindsight, perspective-wise, we know that the tornado in East Kentucky there, back late Friday night, is something that really could have technically met the criteria for a tornado emergency. All those people losing their lives, we were on forward there around Laurel County and the community there of London. But you just never know. Yeah, we were with that for you. We were with this one here. That one seems to have been, probably worse than what, did happen on Huntsville. But all that population there, you just never know with the meteorology as you're tracking things, as you're monitoring things. So, again, continuing to track things. We're looking at this storm in Mississippi. There's some rotation right over Yazoo City there. I'm going to look a few thousand feet up. Can't tell for sure if there's a tornado with that, but some rotation, these little hooks in this environment. There's enough span to cause concern. Maybe not overwhelming concern unless you can get like the mountain involved here and the terrain accent. But that looks like inflow there. We were concerned about something down there. It's still suspicious looking. You gotta wonder if that's gonna spin up towards Scottsboro. That one would probably head closer towards Scottsboro. Despite it being under tornado warning for an area that may not be around Scottsboro. So again, just gotta keep on tracking, keep on monitoring here. That is for sure. So Chattanooga, watching you guys there in southern Tennessee. This storm here has that hook on it. Moving up toward the Dayton, Tennessee community. No tornado warning there at the moment, but you have to have a tornado warning around areas just south of McMinnville, especially where the focus is. Moving from Warren County into Van Buren, but let me switch radars. And then when you look at a piston radar, it makes things hard, but that's kind of the same principle because it's gonna be different in the heights you think. When you're with the terrain, it's gonna throw you off. But you see this rotation there, moving up maybe toward areas there. I gotta refresh this here. Bear with me. These frames. Looks like it's headed more easterly toward maybe Pikeville, Tennessee next little bit. But you see severe thunderstorm went around Cookville and Putnam County, Tennessee. That, of course, they had a horrible tornado 5 years ago. Hopefully, folks, the ones that did survive that were able to kind of rebuild. And 65-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail, the possibilities there. So let me see if there's any questions or comments here. Let me see if there's anything in terms of damage that I can kind of figure out there toward Huntsville. Looks like a meteorologist in Charleston, South Carolina, reporting that a friend staying at a Drury Inn and Suites in Huntsville, that the hotel had some damage, so not good. Maybe not extreme damage, but some damage. Again, continuing to give you guys the latest here. Again, do have to make the point that all tornado emergencies are not the same. One in southern Illinois back Friday night, we had almost an EF5 as a high in DF4 based on the survey there, and areas in the vicinity of Marion, Illinois. I mean, that, it's just terrible. 2-story home, photo on social media, multiple photos, really. Yes, it was there, and then all of a sudden, it's gone. Literally, it's just a slab. This tornado emergency, I don't think we had that there toward North Alabama. Still quite a bit of damage, but not to that level from my early assessments of the situation. But there are 16,630 customers in the dark in Madison County there, where Huntsville is located. So you got to keep that in mind here too. It's quite a few people in the dark, not like the Tallahassee tornado situation last year or anything like that, but still noteworthy. As we continue to watch, continue to track, I think what we're going to do here, we're going to keep an eye on the situation like we always do here as we monitor things. But I think it's to the point now where we should just go to the radar stream for a little while. There's no, as I'm showing this, there's no tornado emergencies right now. We wouldn't go off during a tornado emergency and just start showing radar, just leaving it up and only break back in if needed. But we're going to get that loaded so we can have a loop going of the overall pattern and leave that up at least for a little while and see how things progress in case we need to cut back in. So I hate, to jump away and then in 5 minutes something really spins up in that northeast Alabama area and we all of a sudden see a massive debris signature with the tornado emergency having to be issued again. And then by the time we get in, 2 or 3 minutes later with another stream, because this just takes time with the equipment to, be able to start that back up and the streaming, sources. And, you start to have you have a little bit of a situation where you're not able to be on top of it quite as good. So you can lose 2 or 3 minutes of warning that way for people in the immediate path there. Or not even give them a warning, possibly, unfortunately. Okay, so we got the looping radar up now. Maybe you kind of reposition this just a little bit here. Real quick, I'm going to look at the Illinois stuff. I just want to see how that's looking. Okay, so it's a bit thunderstorm warning up there, not a tornado warning. So let's reposition it to the south a little and kind of focus down here. So we'll do it like that. We'll leave this running. We'll break back in if necessary. Now you got to watch out for there in East Kentucky too. I already had one severe thunderstorm warning around London after they had the tornado that killed so many people back Friday night. And we may Yeah, let me do that real quick. I'm going to jump on that. So there's a severe thunderstorm warning just west of London, but it includes Somerset, who was hit by the tornadic activity there as well. Let's just see if there's like, there's some rotation in that storm headed toward areas further to east there. You see like Garrard County there and the like. That looks kind of concerning, quite honestly. There's a tornado possible tag there. This one down here, there's a radar indicated hail and wind, but not a tornado possible tag right now. There's around Somerset and moving in the direction of London, and of course where the airport, area was there, and I-75. But we were focused on that on Friday night so much. Let me see. I don't even, we don't have the measurements coming from there anymore. I can't imagine. As we look, I know it's kind of over. Well, I'll change that real quick. Yeah, no measurements coming from there. That was temperatures, if you were wondering what that was for a second. But no measurements coming from there, unfortunately, after what happened. That terrible tragedy there in Laurel County. So many people losing their life, across the county, really, as it was on the ground for a while. But around London, mobile homes just decimated there. And absolutely terrible East Kentucky tragedy late Friday there toward that Lexington/Hazard TV market area, which rarely sees stuff to that level of intensity. F4, F4 is not happening in that area very much. I mean, hadn't really had, a situation that was really significant like that in terms of tornadoes. They've had flooding in some of these areas, but the tornado threat that was so deadly, hadn't really seen something like that, with the higher end type of warnings and concern, at least since 2012, so March 2nd, 2012. So very, very concerning, and just terrible. I thoughts and prayers got everybody impacted by all the significant tornadic activity and any severe tornadic, severe weather and tornadic activity, flooding as well. And some of these areas still recovering from the flooding situation going back over the last, few years, a couple of different floods. So we're going to leave this running. We'll cut back in here if it is warranted as we're looking at things here, but we're just going to kind of leave this running on the screen. And if we have an escalation, another turn, potentially at least for the worst, we'll pop back in here with coverage. But that's going to do it. I would still continue to call this a tornado outbreak, quite honestly, even though, until just a little while ago, maybe not seeing really strong tornadoes. But, I may have had something at least toward EF2 probably, toward some of those areas. I know we had a spin up area there. I hadn't double checked to see if they confirmed it as a tornado, but maybe some type of, tornadic activity, at least wind damage on the north side of Cape Girardeau last night. And then that was, happening real quick there as the situation started to evolve. So just always got to stay on top of things here in the Weather Center, and always have multiple ways to get alerts, obviously. Very important. I know one method is NWS Tornado on Twitter, but there's plenty of other methods. With a radio normally, some areas like Birmingham and Nashville today were down. So the offices had to replace some stuff. So those, that method wasn't working today. But again, just continuing to track things here, continuing to monitor as we're doing with things. You just always got to stay on top of the situation. We just get the newest update for the outlook. And so let me pull that under here. Let's see if it's updated yet on this source. It has. Okay, so you see the marginal risk there. It's just, Port to Southeast Alabama there under that. As we're looking there, we'll have that marginal risk. And it does include a little bit of Clipman County. So that does go into those, wee hours of the morning there with a risk of at least some damage and wind. In theory, a quick spin up couldn't be ruled out there. Hail also kind of right on the edge of that. So low risk, not zero. Have multiple ways to get alerts. Currently, no confirmed tornado warnings now, which is nice, but things can always change here, obviously, as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here in toward the Weather Center. We'll have to watch for some strong to severe storms in Florida, South Georgia tomorrow. Not really widespread, but some areas could get, under some type of warning. There's your tornado risk that remains, your hatched area that remains, your wind risk, your hail risk. This is where strong tornadoes could still theoretically evolve, and that's around the Chattanooga area. So we still have to, since we've had that history now of something happening there, further west toward Huntsville, Chattanooga. seems preliminarily, as I look, the main population zone of that enhanced risk for tornadoes, but Scottsboro is as well, with the higher end EF2 plus tornado threat being on the board. New tornado warning for Scottsboro, by the way. Radar indicated at the moment based on the Weather Service's assessment of things. A severe thunderstorm at 7:53 Central Time was capable of producing a tornado near Woodville, Alabama, moving 15 miles north of Gunnersville. Is another location identifier, moving east at 35 miles an hour. Portions there of that region impacted. So again, continuing to give you guys the latest here with the radar. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up the commentary for now, I think. I appreciate everybody tuning in, watching the coverage on the different platforms. And then you always got to stay weather aware. I know Yazoo City, they definitely, one viewer was talking about how they've had, a lot of active weather over the years in that part of the state. That is for sure. Thanks so much for watching there, everybody. And we're going to leave this on up, of course. Do that for a little while longer. We're planning to come, assuming we don't have to be on much longer with, commentary like this. We'll have another stream later tonight with our formal update. There's other different platforms I'm on. I appreciate you guys tuning in, trusting me here in the Weather Center on the YouTube. If you want to listen to what I just talked about and why this stream's still going, you can back it up there on youtube.com / the @cloud2weather for the commentary of what had occurred here and what we thought had occurred, and even looking at that forecast model in the early parts and later parts of tomorrow. So again, that's the storyline there. We thank you again for tuning in. We thank you for trusting me as we continue to watch things within this tornado outbreak. I'm going to leave this running. We'll pop back in if it is necessary here. But otherwise, we'll update another stream on all those different platforms here later tonight. Stay safe.